I don't think you can hear.
I can definitely
Okay,
hear
got
you.
it. Can you?
I got you.
Oh, you can. Good. Good.
Yeah,
Good.
all good.
It's doing. All right, man. And you're not going to use the video.
No.
Good. Good. Okay.
How
Cool.
you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing all right.
Good, good.
Life is life is just, I'm not going to complain, man. Life is good. So that's your music room, huh?
Yeah,
Cool.
this is my home studio behind me. Like I
And yeah.
no, I'm sitting like facing my desk, but when I turn, I can cut drum tracks here and kind of operate the whole scenario, behind me.
Uh-huh.
You know,
That's really convenient. So you use Pro Tools there?
I have I use Logic.
Oh, you use Logic. That's right. You
Logic,
said that.
yeah.
Yeah. No,
Love.
Logic's great. I prefer Logic. I mean, I don't have either one. I have a hard disk thing, but
I had
I do have the free Pro Tools actually.
I did make an attempt to use Pro Tools and kind of couldn't figure it out. And Logic was just so easy for me. It's kind of like
Yeah.
GarageBand. You know.
It's whatever you start on. Sure, I agree.
Yeah.
I have the opposite problem with it. I can only use Pro Tools because that's what I learned on.
Oh wow.
And when I go to Logic, I'm like, what the fuck? But regardless, yeah, I guess you do because you do want to talk. You did want to talk about recording,
No,
so
totally,
so that
totally.
that would be part of it.
No, we
But
could.
because I did, yeah. Go ahead. Anyway,
No, I'm just gonna see if I can
but do
text
you?
my kids to let the dog out upstairs. Hold on one.
Yeah. All
And
right, little pup.
yeah, well, we have two dogs now, and
Mm-hmm.
they are. Uh, Hold on a second. It's crazy that like we're in the same house, but I'm texting my kids who are upstairs to like do stuff.
It's a lot easier. Yeah. It's instead of a walkie-talkie, it's a lot easier. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I
Yep.
think that's commonly how people do it now, isn't it?
Yep. Hey, so anyway, so I want to thank you for meeting with us, and I was looking forward to our chat. And we've known each other for quite some time, right?
Yes, Brian.
Yes.
We've been playing music together since the 90s.
Yeah.
Since the definitely it's been a long and fruitful relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we first worked together during the Candy Fly era in '92.
Yes, absolutely. And feeling is mutual. And I just wanted to say that I was looking forward to interviewing you. I know we've chatted before and we've talked about music and so on, but I've never had the opportunity to kind of like roll up my sleeves and kind of like get inside. So I was looking forward to our conversation tonight. But I mean, I kind of always start with like, tell us about yourself. Tell us how you got here. What is it that you do? Kind of, why don't you explain to people, uh, a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are? And take as long or as little time as you need.
Well, yeah, that's pretty broad, but I understand your the intent of the show, and so yeah, I basically what I am is I mean, meaning that can we start that over, Brian? I'm sorry,
Sure,
man.
absolutely. We'll
Yeah,
start right here.
yeah, I just really I gotta get into this. Okay.
Not a problem. Basically, it would be great for us to assume that there are some people listening that are not familiar with your
Uh-huh.
work, with your
Sure.
songs, with what you do. It'd be great to kind of like let's give them, give them a little 3-4 minute um, you know expose or a story about how you got into the business, how you became a songwriter, how you would classify yourself or so on, and really
Sure.
anything that you felt was important along those lines.
Absolutely. And like if I met somebody on a plane and they said, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, this
Exactly.
is what I do." I'm the luckiest guy. I'm the luckiest guy in the world. First of all, I mean, the inside musician joke. I just saw the luckiest guy in the world today. you saw Max Weinberg? That's a really cruel joke. I love Max.
I've never heard
But
that.
but
I'm gonna
I am. Oh no,
you
I
mean,
shouldn't even. That's an old dated. I mean, that dates me. But the I love Max.
that's really
But that
good.
used to be a funny joke, man, because
You know
he
what?
used to
That
be
is very
funny.
funny, but I would have said maybe Fred Smith from the B-52s.
Pretty much in that. Hey, but I'm third, and I
Right.
just happen to be like a lucky guy who well, first of all, the answer to the question is I'm a singer songwriter who somehow gets by, having written whatever I've written, 60, 80 songs. I don't know how many I've written. Gets by living on my publishing
Right.
and doing the occasional gig. But I'm that's my job that I've made it this far as. But it's not. It is. So that's my job description. I'm a singer songwriter. I
Gotcha.
go around. I show up at a club with my acoustic guitar and do gigs.
Right.
And that was not really my goal in the inception. I mean, I didn't really intend to just be kind of one guy. I wanted to be a big rock star with a big management team and stuff. I realize that's not the way it always works. I think that people, if I'm talking in this way to the imaginary listener, Brian, I guess the person I would talk to would be, like a 15-year-old version of me, or a 17-year-old version is like, which in the old days, the 70s, I'm class of 79. It was a perfectly noble, reasonable, and admirable goal to want to be a long-haired, dope-smoking rock star, chasing chicks, and just being, that was really a job description, and I went for that. Now it's not the same. Now, but music is still as important. In fact, I'd say it might be more important because, as you know, the constant presence of it on our computer screens,
Yeah.
the need for it. People need to mythologize it, and I did the same thing, and so here I am talking about it I guess on the other end of it, but I'm still doing it for a while.
Yeah.
I'm not done yet, but certainly on the other end of the process.
So tell.
And what I'd say to that kid is just like, man, if it's really strange, look around you, like dreams can come true. Like if you're the right kind of person and you just have the right attitude and you're blithe enough and just kind of naive, that stuff will come true. So always be ready for that and learn how to be, I know this sounds trite, but learn how to be a better person, but learn that your character is going to be the thing that people are going to remember.
Right.
That's just kind of a lesson. I mean, I think this comes from somebody, as you might guess. I had some character flaws that I've had to like really, correct, but I just say that kind of stuff. But regardless, again, that describes a singer songwriter. Everyone I know,
Yeah.
every singer songwriter wouldn't be a good one. It seems like unless they were
So
already kind of a
tell
wreck.
us, dig a little deeper about your early days. Where did you have aspirations to like be in a band, or was it always to be a band leader, or was it? I mean, how did songwriting
I
come
think it
about?
was. I, well, I think it was inevitable because for some reason, I had it in my head that I was going to be a musician, and I never told anyone. It's kind of strange, I went to high school, had a guitar, and wrote some songs, but no, I never said to anyone, "Hey, I'm going to join a band and be a rock star." I just did it in my bedroom, and I did that when I lived in Lawrence, Kansas. I moved there for school, and then I moved to New York, and I kept doing it. And eventually, I had enough demos and 4-track demos that I got a record deal, but I hadn't really even played live that much. I did some live shows in Lawrence, Kansas when I lived there, but not really in the way that, like, since then I moved to Nashville, I moved to Austin. I met guys who are my age who were in bands when they were 13, work in bands,
Yeah.
14, and I realized, oh, that's a whole different kind of, I really respect those guys, man, real like journeyman, like music is their dad was in the biz, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I came up the opposite. So when I moved to New York, I had my day job and my 4-track, and I'd go to my day job and I'd make my 4-track tapes. Finally, my demos got out to a journalist who gave them to Bar None Records.
Right.
I hadn't even played a gig. I didn't even play gigs. I didn't know where to, I wouldn't even know what to do in New York. I had a day job. Where was I going to get a gig, you know? So I got this call on my landline, of course. No email. There wasn't any email. It was a
Yeah.
call like, hey, we're Bar None Records. You know, we really like your stuff. Come to Hoboken and see us. Anyway, and that's kind of what happened. Was I went from a home demo guy to a person playing live shows and learning how to do that, and then I got a record deal, and that was very. This is the description. I was backwards. I learned on the job.
Right.
You know, making the first record in
Yeah,
Hoboken,
because
and then
mean,
the second record.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I mean, because this is the first time that I'm hearing this, hearing you describe it as such. But you would think that a lot of musicians would, try and be in a band first, and maybe they write songs with their
Oh
bandmates.
man, are you
Maybe
kidding
they try
me?
and make it
It's
together.
really the total.
You know.
It was totally the way to do it, and I realized that early on when I was, let's say I was 21, living in Lawrence, working at restaurants, dropped out of school. I tried to play in a couple of bands. I wasn't very good because I wasn't a very good musician, and I was a rather difficult person to deal with. I didn't want to compromise at all, and I was really into this punk band, The Fall,
Uh huh.
and I wanted to do stuff really rough. And the guys I played with didn't want to do stuff rough. So anyway, so it wasn't working out. And so when the 4-track came out, the Fostex, it wasn't even a Fostex, it was a Vestax brand, off brand, at the local music store there in Lawrence. I saw it. I said, "Oh my god, this is for me." You know, I bought it on time. If you can believe that, I gave the guy $50 down.
Yeah.
And paid him every week for my restaurant job, and I started making these demos, and that was my goal. I was going to be like, who, like Prince.
Yeah.
Prince was big then. It's like, I'm going to do my own shit, man. I was like, and so that's really where it started, was my inability to kind of vibe with other musicians. I don't know what it was. It was something that, I guess I would say this thing again to this theoretical musician, if she's listening.
Yeah.
It's like, follow your thing. Don't listen to what other people think you should do. Like in my case, here I am talking to my former self saying, darn it, I wish you could have learned to play with other musicians and gotten along with them. Well, I didn't want to.
Yeah.
So really, like at that time, it was best for me to just like realize, well, I'm not into this thing.
Right.
I don't care about, so anyway, so if someone's being told that by their bandmates, oh, you're difficult to work with, it's like, well, maybe you are. You can certainly do it your own self these days. And so that's the story there. That as I started doing 4-tracks and moved to New York City with this dream of making a record. That's why when Can You Fly came out, because when Trouble Tree came out, it was a first record. It was really, I got to admit, I'm lucky. I was lucky to be in baseball, as they say. Like, that's pretty, it's an indie first record. Some people were like, what the hell?
Trouble Tree is a very good record.
See, people like, so that's fine. But then Can You Fly came out and it was legit. We really, the band was good. The songs were more developed. And, Mark put together a really good crew of people. Anyway, the people back in Lawrence, Kansas, when Can You Fly came out and got all the press, were like, who, like literally, like, who is this guy from Lawrence? Oh, that was Fred. Oh, you mean that pothead guy that worked at the cornucopia? Yeah, he's like, so anyway, that's what happened. And that was in a way, it was rewarding for me, not rewarding or strange for me. I realized, wow, I really did. I kind of made it.
Yeah.
That's still the thing for me. I still, those my last days of my day job, when Can You Fly was getting, this notice all of a sudden, like nationwide notice, and I still had a day job. Those were my happiest days, I'll say, because I still had a steady job. Life was good. And all of a sudden, like my musician friends, when I was living in Hoboken, they were like treating me very differently. All of a sudden, I was just. People started treating me very differently. They were like taking me seriously. No, they wouldn't normally take me seriously at all.
Yeah.
For a good reason. Like the people from Yola Tango, for example, friends of mine. Ira and Georgia. They're really nice, but they wouldn't even. Like I'd see them, they would maybe wave or something in the past before Can You Fly.
Yeah.
But then after when Can You Fly came out, they were like, "Hi, Freedy." Like they actually would say my name.
Yeah.
which was really nice. I realized, oh wow, I actually arrived. So I must admit that was my highest point, and I am actually good with that part of it as well. Talking to the young musician again, because
Yeah.
you see it happen with so many artists. Maybe not with Neil Young or Paul McCartney or guys who have these careers, but a lot of times you're gonna have a high point, and that's it. You'll have some other high points, but you'll look back and say, well, that was the best time. It's like, well, okay, there you go. It's like an NFL player. It's like, yeah, man, the 2006 season, that was my season.
Right.
So I really enjoy thinking about it like that. Like, you don't get that. You don't get to be, not everybody gets to be Bruce, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What was it like to make
And
Trouble?
even Bruce, like he had his heyday.
Yeah, of course, of course. Oh,
What was it like?
yeah. Well, so you're telling us that you're kind of painting this picture of you're kind of the lone songwriter, the lone musician, and then here you are. Now you're making a record. You get to make a record with Bar None. So is this the first record you've made? And if so, is this the first time that you're like interacting with other musicians in the studio and asking them?
It was rough.
No.
Yeah, it was rough at first. It ended up really well because Chris Butler and James McMillan, good friends of mine, the engineer and the producer, Chris Butler, James the engineer, became really good friends. We started a band actually. We were called the Know It All Boyfriends, the first incarnation of this band, the Know It All Boyfriends. I have a current band for 20 years now, actually, with Butch Vig and Duke in Madison, called the Know It All Boyfriends. We poached the name. I made it up so I could poach it. Regardless,
Nice.
I remember the first times we got to record. I had a producer. I was paired with the producer and the engineer, and given recording time by Bar None, which was negotiated with Water Music as free time. So it was like 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. You know what I mean? Just terrible. And so I remember the first night, I admit it. I mean, I cried. I wept real tears because I got there at 8 p.m. thinking we'll be done by 2. I got to go to work in the morning.
Yeah.
It's 3:30 and they're still like doing this, like, whatever they're doing. I don't know. It's what they're just like doing this, replaying the same part again and again. I'm like, I never been in that environment again before. And I was tired. I just remember laying on the couch there thinking, this is really, this can't go on. This can't, because this is not how I recorded at home. I was used to making all these demos and the way I still do them.
Yeah.
Really fast and, no edits and stuff. Regardless. So that was the first night. And it ended up going really well. I just had to learn. And by the time we did Can You Fly, again, if you can believe it, and this is with respect for Glenn, like if he sees, I'm friends with Glenn. He was doing his best. He would always, Can You Fly was also, he would get us cheap time. He would what am I saying?
Are you referring? So you're referring to Glenn?
He would give us cheap. He would give us Glenn Morrow from Barna. He would give us cheap time to save himself money. Anyway, I was basically castigating myself for saying like he wasn't doing you a favor. Anyway, but he's a good guy. But he was giving us the free time that he would get from Water Music. So Can You Fly? Once again, we were recording at night, though not for all of it. I think Mark did get him to give us some weekend days. But I definitely recall too many times doing that. And I've learned since, again, this is work info for the people who want to get in the biz. You're going to have certain hours of the day you're going to realize, even if you're just a writer, musician, where you're better.
Absolutely.
And like I realized that the hours from 7 p.m. till midnight, unless there's a gig on, like I'm not going to be able to work in the studio. It's very strange how the gig gives you this. I mean, I don't care. The gig will give you adrenaline rush and you'll make it. But if I'm working in the studio, I try to be done by 7 or 8 because the body just says, okay. But regardless. So that's how that went. And
that is a great point, by the way, which I've never really put my thumb on, about kind of like your natural being in sync with your natural energy, but
well, that's part of it. Yeah. The other thing that I got into early on, which was good because they were trying to save money and trying to save time. There was a real atmosphere of we got to get this done and we need to work hard at this and get this rather than later on in my career, it was, hey, how you feeling? You feeling good?
Yeah.
You want to make some music? We don't have to do it right now.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want to take five?
Yeah.
It's just like looking for the magic.
Yeah.
And early on, it was like, go out do the magic, kid. You got 5 minutes, do your magic.
Yeah.
And so that was an early thing because that's how I worked at home. If I felt like recording, I'd record.
Yeah.
But in the studio, you're doing it, and that was something to learn. Actually, I absolutely had to learn that, and I did. You learn how to turn it on. Any performer does, and I love being in the studio now because I can really do a good job because I know what to do. But early on, that was really it was trial by fire, and luckily went pretty well. I would say, overall, my introduction to the studio because I I did learn that, yeah, well, it sounds a lot better, when the pros do it and all this, it's great to play with a band, a real drummer and all
Right.
this.
Right. Well,
And can you find,
talking about
yeah,
getting, cheap or free studio time. You also got a very young John Sickett uh, on
yeah,
that album as well, right? I mean, because he's
Johnny,
kind of just getting into the business as well.
John and I, John and I have been through ups and downs, man. And he's been on a lot of side projects of mine from the day
Yeah.
that first day. I was there for the first day he started. He's also done. We did some recordings, you and I and Graham,
Yeah.
a couple years ago. Before that, he did a couple of special projects. Anyway, I know John really well, so I've seen him from day one. He is a and Graham,
Yeah.
very constant people, and yourself, a constant in which is good to see. It's good to feel that the people I'm still working with, Jared, Shram.
Yeah.
Um, it was a good time.
So you,
So that was, yeah,
Freedy, back in, so a couple things. You mentioned your apartment in Hoboken. Was that your apartment on Willow Street?
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah. And I have this memory of maybe we were rehearsing in your apartment, or maybe I had a snare
yeah.
drum and a hi-hat or something. But I think I remember seeing your home recording setup. And were you using a cardboard box as a bass drum?
Yeah.
Very
I had a real snare and hi hat and a real pedal, actually, a Yamaha pedal, but just a cardboard box. Yes,
Yeah.
I saw the guys in the subway doing it. It was working
Yeah.
fine for them.
Well, no, I was going to ask you about that because you're again, being that you were recording your own demos and you say you recorded them quickly. So you what did you do? You just put together a quick trap set. You got a bass. What did you do? Like, did you lay down a guitar?
Yeah, I had the 4 track. I bought a Vetter 4 track. I bought a Yamaha, a nice one, which I still had actually. It was a 2-speed 4 track cassette.
Right.
It was quite hi-fi. Um, the that's like 7 inches a second, so that's like reel to reel speed.
Yeah.
But the what am I trying to say? I also had a Roland drum machine, and so I would program the kick drum patterns often, and then play along with that. So there'll be Roland kick, and then snare and hi hat. I do that a lot. Um, because I really was. I look back now, and I just, it was clearly in me. It's all I wanted to do was get home from work, smoke weed, and write songs and record them. It was fantastic life.
Yeah.
And like I say, I look back on my days there as golden, but you can't think that way. But that's what I would do. Um, and I remember when I would number them, like one through like every cassette, and I would look at them as little records. I still have them all, of course. I'd get about 4 or 5 songs on a cassette, and I got up to number 20. I remember getting up to number 20, and I was living in Queens, and I just gotten the Barnum thing. I said, I think this is my last one. I'm done with the demos. So I started done with it, and I just about filled up this briefcase that held cassettes. So I was like, I got to 20, and then I stopped. I don't think I ever made it number 21. I moved on to not numbering them, just doing them individually. I started doing the songs on individual cassettes. Maybe it was like a professional thing.
Yeah.
Or I didn't make it such a precious thing that I had my little library.
Yeah.
you know. So that's the story there. I did a record called "The Way I Were," which a lot of people said, not a lot of people, a couple of people said, "Oh man, you put out these, they're really early demos of mine." That's, like my friend Jay said, "Oh, that's not very good, man. You shouldn't have put that out." Well, it's not very good, but some of it's pretty good. But those are where you can hear those recordings
Right.
on "The Way I Were,"
Is that
and some of them,
pretty? Is that available
yeah,
to?
it's still. I think it's still streaming. Yeah, I own it. I own all that stuff again. The I know it was on CD. I'll have to check if it's
Yeah.
streaming. Anyway, those songs were at the time. This is how it worked for me. I'd get a song in my head, and it wouldn't leave, and I'd be at work, and I'd be thinking about it, and I'd be really excited, and I'd get home and I'd record it, write some lyrics, finish it, and then I'd immediately like disown it, or something would happen. I'd just be like the next morning, I'd be like, God, what a failure, what a failure. And then
Yeah.
I wouldn't listen, and I'd be on the bus to through the Lincoln Tunnel again, thinking of another song, like, oh, I got to make a better one than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then, obviously, then after a week or two or a month or whatever, I'd listen back to the thing I'd done and like it, but I would never like it immediately. That's something I got used to. Like I said earlier, but if musicians have to just adjust to their own temperament, I had to adjust to that.
Right.
It's like I was never going to just feel like, wow, I knocked that out of the. It wasn't so much the song; it was the recording.
Right.
It was like I wanted to get it perfectly, and I wasn't going to start over. So that's kind of what I mean, if that makes more sense. It's
Yeah,
like I
of
didn't
course.
disown the songs fully, but it was like, well, shit, I'm not going to start doing that again, but I'll move on. And
Yeah.
eventually it did result in getting in your ears getting better. I think kids now have so much more access to gear. Their ears are probably better anyway.
So do you think
Everybody
there's
does
something?
video podcasts now and
Do you,
stuff.
do you think there's something to be said for, just plowing through those instead of obsessing over, song number 2 and 3 and 4 and trying to make them better and better and better, but the idea of just like writing another song tomorrow and writing another song the next day and writing another song, and recording that
Yeah.
one and so on, like just kind of like building up the muscle, of writing and
It's
recording.
building up the muscle. It is, and it's learning. If it's like I don't know enough about songwriting to know if what I did is good or not. It's just like throwing the stuff against the wall, kind of. I realized that.
Right.
And some of it came out really well, but it was just really like, well, I don't know what to do here. Now, honestly, I've been doing it for a few decades. I kind of have an idea, like what, at least in a kind of classic sense, what you would do to the next thing in a song.
Right.
But back then, I was like, I don't even know. I mean, now there's a lot of it that's the same, like with any job, like with a person's personality, even. Like if you could meet yourself at 5 years of age or yourself at 50, you'd probably see real similarities.
Right.
And the same way with working. It's like the same. I work on songs kind of the same way I did from day one. I just get some thing in my head that won't go away, and I want to kind of what is it? I want to make it real because honestly, I want to make myself happy. It sounds
Yeah.
kind of dumb, but it's like I want it to be real so I can listen to it and be happy,
Yeah.
rather than like thinking, now I listen to it. I think about I want other people to be happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I first did them, it was sort of like I didn't have any crowd, and so I just wanted to really like I want to do something that's really cool here. Now now it's really the same motivation, but I realize, well, there are people who are going to listen to this.
Right.
Another thing I think, I don't want to skip the track too much, but one thing I certainly learned, because I didn't play stuff for that many people, was when I was listening to my own music demos in the presence of another person for the first time, it changed the way they sounded, the way the demos sounded. It freaked me out. It was a psychological, obviously a tick that happens, but I was like, oh shit. Or the first time I did a song when I'd start doing shows live, and I'd written a song, I'd recorded the demo, I thought I knew it. Then I got up on a stage and played it in front of people. I realized, oh, I haven't even heard the song yet. So there's a real thing there that you think you know, And maybe some people do know. Maybe Jeff Lynne, for example, knows.
Yeah.
What he just did is golden. He doesn't need to try it out in front of other people. Tom Petty, whatever. The late Tom Petty. But anyway, in my case, it's always different, and not just performing, just someone in the room hearing it. Um, it's not the same if you send somebody an MP3,
Right.
Then there's, but if you like something about it, I know I don't know what it would be. I'm sure it's just it's a trick of the mind, obviously.
Right. I wanted to ask you about so these demos that you have or that you are cataloging, do you have, are they all full songs, or do you have any that are like little bits or pieces of a verse here or an untitled riff here, and then do you have bits and pieces floating around of your ideas?
Those those came later after I actually was the real, like I actually realized I was doing it, and those exist on little mini cassettes, the
Yeah.
little tiny dictaphone things.
Yeah.
I have lots of those, and on cassette too. I would just I have lots of them, but they only started after I started making records for
And
some reason.
have you relied on any of that? Have you gone back and like?
I've been through those things a lot. They are gold mine. I have them on my phone now. For the past 10 years, they've been on my phone. I've lost some, which makes me very sad. But they're all my new song. I've got, I just did a new record, but
Yeah.
but now I have a dozen other songs that were waiting in line to be done, and all of those I'm sure I could trace back to some kind of first phone idea, or maybe they're even old enough to have been a dictaphone idea, because a lot of the songs are really old. But yes, I have to work that way, because that's another important point, which I'm sure that musicians you would learn, but maybe hearing it makes you learn it quicker. If you get a music idea, at least from my experience, a music and lyric or melody idea, you better catch it. You'll never get it again, and it might be really unique, and it might be really good.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I finished songs, and people have said, "Wow, that's really a great musical thing. I've always loved that in your song. What about it?" Well, it was an idea I had once, and I luckily hummed it into a recorder. Otherwise, I would have forgot it too.
Yeah.
Something like "This Perfect World" or something, And so they're invaluable to me. I know when an idea comes. I know by now. I'll go like, "Oh, good," and I'll be back to it. And somehow they again, the muscle, like you talked about, the mental muscle that you have to exercise. I think it came with me wanting to be a musician anyway, and always thinking about being. But I can remember my melodies in a weird Rain Man kind of way. Like I can look at a list of them, of these little scratch names for them. It's like, oh, I know that one. Oh, that one's from like the '80s. Oh, I know that. Weird to me in a way that they're still cataloged. Meaning, there's like those are old song ideas, and they're still there. So I'm lucky in that regard. I'll die with the unfinished stuff, like any songwriter. And I'm lucky for that. It hasn't really stopped.
Are those
changed,
ideas both lyric ideas? Like, does a phrase come to you that you have to speak into your voice notes, or is it more like a melody idea comes to you that you have to do?
Well, it's generally It's generally a melody, groove idea, guitar groove and melody.
Gotcha.
With maybe a word, but the word is more important as like the implication of the word, like the phonetic side.
Yeah.
And how it, because words are it's just like caveman stuff, Ooh,
Yeah.
So and having read a lot of interviews, that's a really very common way of working. It's really it's nothing new. I'm not inventing anything. It's just the way I tend to fall into it. I just learned early on to record the things, because I was not recording them, and I'd say I'd say to myself, I'll remember that later, and I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And realize, wow, I'm lost a song there, and this is when I was actually a songwriter. Then I realized, well, I got to remember these. It kind of matters now.
because
But then as far as the first recordings, the number ones, I did finish them. I wasn't really like doing. I was too timid. I just wanted like, okay, we got a song here. We're gonna do the bass track, but I'm gonna try to be clever. You know, I was trying to do something that was clever.
yeah,
I don't know. I play it. You know, I just wanted to be able to play it for someone and say, oh, that's funny. You know, there's a little bit of a jokey thing when you're younger, when you're you know the weight of the world on your shoulders.
yeah,
There's no mystery maybe that I ended up on the They Might Be Giants label. You know, could be.
yeah. There, there you go. Well,
I don't know.
you kind of answered one of my next questions because I was going to ask you. You probably gotten this question a million times, but what comes first, music or lyrics? And I mean, do you ever get that great hook and great groove, and then you're like, shit, I don't know what am I trying to say in this song? I mean, or does that stuff just flow for you, or does it just come?
No, it's terrible. It's terrible for me. I just finished a record, and it was a real clog in my brain. I got the record done, but I was having trouble finishing the lyrics. You know, I have to admit, the songs are years old,
Yeah,
and I finished them, but it was just like they're. I'm not sure what the deal. I mean, I'm moving in a couple weeks, moving next door here, and I'm gonna have some slack time. I'm going on a trip. I don't have any gigs lined up. It's like the difficulties I had writing the lyrics made me realize like, okay, I've got to go see some humans
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
I haven't done it. I mean, listen, man, this is the third pandemic year. It's like I'm pretty good at isolating. It's like I'm way too good at it.
Right.
Um, so, but as far as that relates to the lyric writing, I realized I've got to go see people. Like when I went to Hoboken to do some gigs last October, I saw more activity and life and potential song ideas in my morning walk in Jersey City,
Yeah, yeah,
than I see in a couple months out here in Joshua Tree, and that's just normal, So
yeah.
I miss that. But
Um,
but as far as writing songs, it's really normal to do it that way. I think I've met songwriters, and I really admire them. I truly admire them. I never figured out how they did it, like John D. Graham, who
mhm.
write out a text. They write out a text, and then they put music to it. It's like what? That's just like I don't understand it. It's like I don't know. It's like building something upside down.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. Um, I did want to ask you about your guitar playing, because I've got like kind of two things I want to talk about or ask you about. But one is, how do you? I mean, do you view your guitar as like the vehicle by which you get your songs out, or, I mean, is there, or did you ever sit down to like practice guitar and like improve technically at it, or how do you see your guitar? How do you see your guitar play? And the reason that I'm asking you this, I mean, this could be a multi-part question, is because A, your guitar playing is excellent, and you're very assertive in your guitar playing, and B, what I personally really appreciate about your guitar playing and much of your songs is that you definitely are not afraid to play rock and roll. You're not afraid. You're not the singer songwriter who's like afraid to play, who's like afraid to rock. And so anyway, where do you see your guitar playing in all of this, like in your songwriting and your playing and stuff like that?
Well, I'm glad you like my playing. Thank you. I've been doing it long enough. I better know how. I've got my own thing by now, but it was based on obviously. I mean, as as reedy and weird as my voice sounds early on, I don't think I would have done it being a musician unless I had some basic talent. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would have made it. Certainly not on my damn looks, and not on my ambition. Um, so I think that I had naturally good rhythm and just ideas for songs. And so that translated into me being able to play guitar better because I could, hear it in my head. But it was just as hard to learn for me as it was for anyone. Like it's really a long-term thing. It took a long time to get to certain levels of being able to do things, and now, well, obviously it's been decades enough that I can thankfully enjoy it and do it without thinking.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
Just don't even think about it. It's I've gotten that far. but I think it was because I had to. One thing I would say is that early on, everybody I met was a better guitar player.
Mhm.
And all these singer songwriters I would see and still see, it's like, I can't believe how good they are. I just like, it blows my mind. Everybody's like Jason Isabel or all these monsters. And I was always like, I'm sorry, these are the only chords I know, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just was for a long time just a basic rhythm player, but I knew the chords I wanted to play. And I have long fingers, so I could do some funky chords, like
Right.
on Tearing Down This Place and stuff.
Right.
It took a long time. Well, and also, like you said about the rock thing, it was really the punk era, man. It's really, I need to rock out more. It was
Yeah.
like my favorite band still is Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Um, but anyway,
No.
but it took a long time before I could. In fact, a really long time. I used to be able to see before I could do these little riffs that I would see other guitar players do that would just blow my mind. Like I'd see my guitar Cameron or Mark Spencer, Jimmy Lee. I'd see them just like tuning up their guitar and just doing these things. I'd be like, oh my God, that sounds like, the greatest guitar player in the world.
Yeah.
And then I realized after a few years, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
It's just like and yet, so somebody else must be hearing that and going like, wow.
Right.
So the guitar really can, you don't take it for granted, but you realize, well, you can do that. Some of the most amazingly expressive sounds, you've heard other players do with enough time.
Yeah.
It just took a long time for me to get there where I can noodle around like I can do a solo now, which I never would have done
Yeah.
for decades. And you see people like Bob, Bob Dylan, like he plays guitar solos now after decades, of course.
Yeah.
Warren Zevon, he
Yeah.
tended, it was, but anyway, so that's the story on my playing. It was not something that was there from day one. I did not take lessons or any of that stuff.
Gotcha.
I
Gotcha.
just bought a guitar through the mail, like they say.
Did you buy a Sears guitar?
I wish I had. It'd probably be worth more. No, I bought an Ovation, a, a a really nice Ovation actually. I mean, that's kind of an oxymoron. I'm sorry for you Ovation lovers out there, but a really nice Ovation is still an Ovation, still a salad bowl,
Yeah.
and yet it was a great guitar to start on. I traded it for a Martin Sigma, not a Martin Martin, but a Martin Sigma. So I traded up when I moved to College Town, the College Town of Lawrence. But I lived in a small town, and there was no music store there in Kinsley, and the nearest one was about 50 miles away, and I didn't have a car. This sounds just like such a dusty old story, but it's true. And so I would spend all my money that I made painting houses on stereo gear because that's just and weed. That's just the way I was. That was going to be the way my life went. And my mother didn't have much hope for me. And that's whatever. It didn't matter to me. Um, and in the stereo magazine, I would buy stuff from a place called Stereo Discounters in Delaware, and they had these catalogs that now I could step back in time. I wish I could have buy all this 70s audio gear that they
Yeah.
had for sale. They would like all these really nice, these JVL speakers and
Like a big receiver, like a big stereo
huge
receiver.
Sansui receivers,
Yeah.
really nice
It's
Kenwood
really, yeah, why
receivers.
not?
And so I bought all this huge stuff. I had huge stereo set that my mother, she couldn't believe it. She's like, why did you buy this? Anyway, they had one issue. They had guitars on the back page. And I was like, what's a guitar?
Yeah.
Like, what are they doing selling guitars through the mail? I just didn't even think. And just immediately I thought, I've got the money in the bank. I've got like the, $300 or $400 in the bank. Boom. Got the money order and sent it in the mail. Didn't tell anybody, of course. And one Saturday morning, I remember it really well. I'm glad I remember it so clearly. It's not one of these false memories. I just remember it really well. Sunny Kansas morning, green, and the UPS truck, just like today, the same UPS truck, same driver, if you can believe it. It's 78, 77, pulls up and gets out of the back this box that's shaped like a coffin, like a guitar box without a case. They look like a coffin kind of. Small at one, a trapezoid that's smaller at one end. And my heart just like because I knew when he stopped, I was like, oh shit, is this my thing?
Yeah.
And he got this coffin out, and I'll always I remember when I first told the story on stage, just how funny it was. I kind of didn't get the whole joke, that like, yeah, there's your coffin, boy, get
Yeah.
used to it. But I remember that very well, and I remember that moment like very well because I was in trouble immediately. Because my mother was in the kitchen and she said, "What's going on?" I said, "Oh, nothing." I went outside and got it, and I came and she said, "What's that?" I said, "Is that a guitar?" So I had to whisk it upstairs. She said, "Why did you buy a guitar?" There's all this like, "Oh, you damn fool," that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's fine. Later on, this is a true story. After being called, just well, not called a damn fool, but just thought of as that, I'm sure, for being a foolish, long-haired, pot-smoking musician, which is pretty much the way to look at a kid like that. Unless they're going to really do it. Anyway, I paid for her kitchen renovation a few years later. So, that's kind of ironic.
There you
You
go.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And actually less than 20 years later, I would say. So in 94, I paid for her kitchen renovation with that very same
Guitar.
life-ending guitar.
Yeah.
But I do remember it arriving and being overwhelmed and not knowing jack shit about it. I had a younger brother who was a musician, and he kind of knew how to play guitar, but we kept our stuff separate. I didn't play his guitar. He was
Yeah.
2 years younger, and he was in band and stuff.
Yeah.
I just started playing.
Yeah.
The long road to somehow getting your fingers where you see those dots on the fretboard. You're like,
Yeah.
there's no way anybody can do that. I know there's somebody right now listening to this podcast thinking, bar chords, there's no way people can really do those. Yeah, well, you can. You'd be amazed.
Yeah. I'm still not there. My hands, my left hand kills me after I do bar chords, and I just realized like
Oh, it's
playing
tough,
the
man.
drums, like if you do it every day, and but like when I see
The only way.
a guitar player playing bar chords, they sound so good, and you get so much out of bar chords, except for when I'm playing guitar. So,
It is truly what you say about the muscle memory. Like I play drums on my demos, but only once in a while. So my drumming muscles aren't good. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Ain't no way. I'll tire out after 3 minutes, and I won't keep good time or that kind of. If I practiced every day, you know,
right.
um, I get better. So that's just the way that goes, man. I would say that luckily, like I'm sure you've learned this with drumming, you sort of turn a corner one day and you realize, wow, I'm not even thinking about this anymore.
Right.
I'm not really learning anything anymore. I mean, you're learning chords and stuff and learning stuff, but you're not really feeling inadequate. I'm sure
Right.
you felt that way with drumming one day, and that's been good for me. That actually the other corner that I turned was doing my demos, was learning to take. Once I had my own bass line on a record, because sometimes because bass lines are often the identifying character of a song or the identifying riff of a song.
Yeah.
So that's a corner to turn when a guitar player says, well, yeah, I'm a bass player too. Because not all guitar players should say that. Or like, when a musician says, yeah, I'm a producer too. It's like, well, are you really a producer? It's like, you got to earn it. So I've earned bass player and guitar player. That's it. And singer, obviously. But I don't claim any other, instrument. And
Yeah.
I think that's pretty normal. But tenor guitar, whatever.
Yeah. And that's
That's maybe
certainly enough, Freedy. You know.
that's enough, man.
Um,
That
I,
is certainly enough. And within that, it's certainly enough. You can get by with just 3 chords within that.
yeah, of
It
course.
can be Hank Williams.
I did want your take on a couple things. One is like, what about some songs? Like, what are some benchmark songs that really like kind of like got your juices flowing? Like whether it's from when you were younger or even now. I mean, like for instance, like I find myself going back constantly and like finding a song that maybe I dismissed as not being good, much earlier in life, and now I appreciate it a lot more. Or just like a song like, wow, I really could have I really could have investigated this a little more, you know, but there definitely some benchmark songs in, I don't know, in our lives, in our musical careers. So do you have any, like, for instance, so I could lead you because I know that you and I spoke about Steve Miller's The Joker. Like that seems to be like a
Uh,
benchmark song, you know?
yeah. Well, when the early, there's the period, the early '70s when I first got an FM radio. I was living with my grandparents, and I took my grandfather's FM radio tabletop. He wasn't using it, you know, so I took it into my room and used it. And that Joker period, '72 or so, was when I first got into music. Totally nostalgic. You know, the following comments are totally nostalgic and blah blah blah, but that's just the way it was. I've looked back at the top 40 lists from that year because I was trying to figure out when, like, Benny. I wrote a thing about Benny and the Jets.
Right.
You
Oh,
know,
what
for
a great song. Yeah.
some online guy wanted a thing about. He wanted the story of when I first heard Benny and the Jets or something like that. So I had to look when it was number one, and and the charts for that date, because of there was only one radio station, were amazing. They were so all over the place, like the Ballad of the Green Berets or
Uh-huh.
Deep Purple, and then the Joker, and then Anne Murray, anything pop, Sonny and Cher, uh, uh, Ray Stevens, The Streak, you know, that kind of stuff, all on the same station.
Yeah.
And so that's what I remember hearing was absolute chaos and loving it. Like David Essex, rock. Well, first of all, just to
Oh my
answer the
God, rock
question
on.
more roundabout,
Yeah.
rock. I was a really big fan of music from early on, but not a big fan of songs because I didn't understand the words. I was into the the groove and the vibe and the whatever I thought the song was about. I always had the words wrong. I remember getting always made fun of with driving around '70s, and it's in, you know, Kansas, and we're smoking a doobie like in the big purple fruit flavored papers, you know, and stuff, and I'm singing in the back seat the wrong lyrics to an Aerosmith song or something because
Yeah.
that's because I heard it differently, you know, always. And it's like, oh, you stupid motherfucker, that's not what it is. Like, so that's the guy I was because I
Yeah.
just didn't care about the words.
Yeah.
It was so my favorite songs are about the music. You know, the words often were pretty great, but that they would be often over my head.
Yeah.
Like the American Pie was really big,
Hmm.
and that's a complicated illusion. You know, that whole song,
Yeah.
illusion with an A. And now I like it more.
Yeah,
Then
me
I was just
too.
like, well, what? Yeah,
As
man,
a
that's a lot
kid,
of words. But as far as like favorite songs, I remember then, and I hear it now, knowing what I liked and why. Like The Joker by Steve Miller,
yeah.
like we talked about the other day. The personality in the track between the bass player and the drummer make that track, and I recognized that at the age of 12.
Yeah.
It's like the drummer is just like he's messing around. He's not taking it seriously, but it's perfect for the track. It's almost like as a professional drummer, you know, it's like that's not really how you're supposed to do the take.
Yeah.
It's like he's just it changes feel. He's just hitting the crashes around, but it's perfect and it hits a groove that makes the song. It was a number one hit. God, you could not go anywhere and not hear that song. And
I
it's
know.
just forget about the words. And like I said before, my favorite band, Led Zeppelin, forget about the words.
Yeah.
So I have often wondered about that because I'm a words guy. I get really mad if I finish a song and I didn't get all the words just right.
Right.
And then it's too late. And like on the last record, I would have liked to change a few lines. It was like, you know, out of time. And it never seems to matter, you know.
Yeah.
But I know that what I really like is music.
Yeah.
And the music of a, you know, that brings those words to you. You know, if you get me, it's like I can't see my own work. It's almost like it's obscured from me. It's when someone says, "Oh, I love that song," blah, blah, blah. I always assume they like the lyrics, and often they don't even know the lyrics.
Yeah.
It's like what they like is the bass line.
Yeah. Well, I guess people are drawn in by different things, right? So maybe for some it's a guitar solo. For instance, the song "Rock On," Dave, isn't that song? Doesn't that song vocal have like a lot of echo? like very echoey.
Oh, it's all
Yeah,
about the production. It's a
yeah,
vibe thing. It's just like it's just, it's one of those moments. Another one that was my favorite song at the time, like I mentioned, which is a product of the recording, not so much the song. Maybe if they recorded, is Benny and the Jets. If they
yeah,
recorded Benny and the Jets differently, it it's a moment, even though it is a studio moment, and
yeah.
they do they.
As a kid, I thought it was a live
I
performance.
always did until I was an adult. I thought it was live, and that's good that they do that. But they play it like it's live, and it probably is. I mean, they're such a good band, but it never ever gets old. Even a song that I don't really like the song, but I like the recording a lot, and I've heard it so much, and still, "Sweet Home Alabama."
Oh, great.
That track, that track is, if you're an engineer and you want to learn how to make like a rock record, well, just try to match that. Try to do a Tom Dowd
Oh,
production there,
yeah.
and
And also,
get everything sounding
King.
that balanced and that ballsy. Then you've done your job.
Yeah,
Um,
amazing, amazing.
I'm amazed when I hear that stuff, and that's why I'm still glad to be doing my little job. I'm still learning. I'm going to go to the store later, and probably at on the overhead music at Vaughn's, I'll hear some song that will just from the old
Yeah.
days, from the '70s, '80s, and it'll blow my mind, and I'll forget about some incredible production thing.
Now,
It's like, oh wow, I forgot. That's so cool. It's always hearing stuff
this
and
is not
learning, or being reminded.
right. This is what's great about going back and listening to music. And a couple things come to mind, and I want to know what you think about them. But I I think, to me, what's humbling about all of this is that perhaps we were listening to these songs as youngsters, but now when we're much older, I realize how much like maturity and wisdom these songwriters and musicians had. I mean, they were
Oh
kids of
yeah,
like 20 years old or so, playing music like grown men. And I don't know, it's very, very, very
I
humbling.
think about that a lot.
Yeah.
I think about that a lot when I watched whatever just the clips of the Get Back movie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I realized, okay, so these guys in this movie, they've already years before written songs that I consider to be like, basic philosophical foundations of wisdom kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they wrote like foundational songs,
Yeah.
Eleanor Rigby,
Yeah.
or We Can Work It Out, things and stuff like, well, the world wouldn't be the same without them. Paperback Writer. And yet I realized if I met them now, I would not take them seriously. They're in their freaking 20s. They don't
I
know
know.
shit.
I
And
know.
so it's really made me realize, like, well, there's some kid today who's just writing this deep, profound thing, but doesn't know maybe how deep it is.
Yeah.
Maybe they did. Maybe I'm being just an old man about it, but it is surprising to me what you can, like when do you turn into a real adult and you're able to be taken seriously? Maybe it's
Yeah.
earlier than you think.
It just
But as
just
far as songwriting, I don't know. I think it's a even the best songwriter is going to change and get better with time. I would think might not be that way with, say, I don't know what to say. Somebody else could be better at their start. Is what I'm trying to say.
right. I wrote
But
down some of the
as a
songs.
singer, for example.
I wrote down some of the songs that you mentioned in our recent conversation, and but some of their other songs came, like Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo what was a hit around the same time.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and
Unbelievable.
actually, so go back and listen to the drum track. And well, I did. I don't know if I'm sure other people have noticed it, but the bass drum doesn't play like the traditional rock pattern. The guy plays like straight eighth notes on the bass drum almost the whole way through. And if anyone else had done it in the session, it would have been like, dude, what are you doing? That's horrible. But this guy figured out a way to make it work. I mean, the drum track is fabulous on Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo. But if I did it, I would have been thrown out of the studio.
Somebody knew. That's what producers are for.
Yeah. And
Yeah. Kind of on that in that. Well, first of all, just to mention, the artists that were really important to me. Steely Dan was and Elton John were my two touchstones. Like I always imagined myself. I had this fantasy world I lived in. I guess that's why I'm a professional musician, because I really did. I lived in a fantasy world, listening to the radio, and I imagined myself on stage, and I would be singing versions of like Real in the Years or Crocodile Rock, whatever. But I hated bridges. So I'd always take out whatever extraneous bridge stuff and extra stuff and be like, why do these people put these damn parts of their songs? Anyway, so that I always had the fantasy of, and David Bowie.
Yeah.
Well, I graduated to David Bowie. We were like, maybe one of the greatest artists in our art form. I think obviously, I think that's a pretty fair statement, actually.
Yeah.
I think heads and shoulders above anybody. But I don't know what I was even trying to say about Bowie. But there you go, man. The
bands like, you were talking about Steely Dan, Elton John, David Bowie. These were the bands.
Yeah, Steely Dan was the big influence on me for lyrics, and then the because I hadn't really written any songs. But then when the Elvis Costello record came out, the first Elvis Costello record, for some reason I got it because I read stereo review and Crawdaddy and stuff, and I got it, and I suddenly understood songs. Like I can do this, and I started writing bad songs then. But up to that time, I hadn't really considered it as any. So it was Elvis Costello who I was first copying, but the guy who I've seen recently on TV and doing stuff, who I never took seriously, and who now is just so awesome to me, is Joe Walsh. Because even back then, he had hits, and I thought, what a joker! And he really was a joker, but he was awesome. And when you see him now live, like he's Daryl's House, who cares how it looks? He's partied hard for years. He sounds and plays the same, and live he sounds like the record. It's just like, and those songs are hilarious. Like Life's Been Good to Me So Far. I realized that's like the deepest.
Yes.
Dylan-esque. It's like, and so I really, when they say you should, the pen should write before they die. It's like Joe Walsh needs some love, man.
Yeah, he is. He's got a great sense of humor, and one of my favorite music documentaries is that Eagles documentary, and I can't even describe their. I mean, Glenn Fry and Don Henley's personalities are like the very type A personality, but Joe Walsh, and I think I don't know why I'm saying this, but within the documentary, I feel like he learned. I mean, he was a star in his own right before he even joined that band, but he had to figure out a way to work with this other band, which was interesting to me. I don't have any other evidence to support anything else, other than
I think it was probably a little more pressure off of him, from what I understand, because he was the ringer.
Yeah.
And the uptightness was going to be probably with everybody, because when you're especially back then, man, it's a big business.
Yeah.
Every decision is important. Again, I saw an interview with the Eagles right after they did the long run. They were just like little kids.
Yeah.
I was like, God, these people are so young.
Yeah.
But Joe Walsh talked about, there was a great episode of the great Paul Schaefer's podcast, where he's got Joe Walsh on, and Joe's talking about those days and how he was brought in as like the rock element. Their manager said, you guys need to get out of the country thing.
Yeah.
And how he was one day, because I guess Joe must be classically trained. That's got to be the way.
I think
because he was doing.
I think he was originally a clarinet player.
Or because he's a real serious musician. Pardon me. He's a serious musician, and he said, I was in my dressing room one day doing finger exercises. That's why I say that, because who the hell does finger exercises? I do finger exercises. It's called rolling a doobie. But he said, I was just playing this thing like something I knew from exercises. And Henley walks by and says, "What's that?" And Joe says, "Well, it's just an exercise." I said, "No, that's a new Eagles song. Work it up."
Yeah.
So it's like, that's how that song came, was through some kind of exercise, which I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's I'm into the as far as the Eagles, like it matters what I'm into. The early Eagles, you know, Southern California country rock stuff is just too perfect. I love it,
Yeah.
you
Oh, it's
know.
great. It's great.
And I know, and so when Joe joined the band, I realized I'm not that into the later Eagles, honestly. I like Joe. I like Joe's solo records all the way through.
Yeah.
You realize when you hear him on the again at the store, he has a lot more singles than you would suspect.
Yeah.
And they're
Certainly.
all pretty good.
Yeah.
And then when you see him interviewed, you realize, well, he's really smart. He's just not just this joker, this jagoff. He's really quite a guy. A
Yeah.
lot of love to Joe Walsh. Another guy who I know he gets lots of the military. The biggest Marine base in the world is just 15 miles from here, so you get a lot of helicopters going over. We're definitely in Putin's crosshairs if there's a nuclear weapon.
Yeah. There you
out
go.
here.
That's why you got
But
to.
I'm moving just next door. I'll be a lot better. But the other guy who is Alice Cooper. Early on, Alice Cooper for me was like, I was kind of scared of him, of course, but I realized now he's just like this joker, completely hilarious guy. But the music, the actual music was really,
Great.
important to me, man. I loved Alice Cooper.
That's
ZZ
great.
Top,
ZZ Top.
Aerosmith.
Aerosmith.
I need once in a while. I will need to put on some of those records.
So you mentioned Tom Dowd, you mentioned Sweet Home Alabama. But I think a lot of, I used to read album jackets as if I was doing research, but I didn't know it at the time, but I used to read album jackets and see like George Marino's name, or Master Disc I used to wonder where is this place? Why am I seeing, what happens in the mastering? But Tom Dowd was a name I saw a lot, but also Bill Szymczyk, I think. Is that his name? Bill Szymczyk?
Yeah, the guy from Joe Walsh.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
produced
No,
Joe Walsh.
no, that's another guy.
He also
No, there's
produced
another guy.
the
Oh,
Eagles.
is he the guy, Bill Szymczyk? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he produced a lot of people. I mean, he was really but he was another, very interestingly, he and Tom Dowd were both, I believe, sonar technicians, in the Korean War. So, and didn't have a
Oh, really?
yeah. Anyway, but
I did not know that.
just brings to mind being curious about who the cast of characters are.
Yeah. Well, one thing. First of all, there's a studio nearby. I could almost see it. Well, it's maybe a mile away. Called Rancho de la Luna. Dave Ketching has a studio. Dave Ketching he used to be in Queens of the Stone Age.
Yeah.
He's got a studio out here, and he's a wonderful individual. I was over there a little while back, and he said, "Hey, man, I had Joe Walsh out here last week."
Ah.
What's it? The whole band, Joe Walsh, with the Barnstormers and Bill Szymczyk.
Oh my
The
God.
whole crew that did all those, and I'm like, "What?" Yeah, they were just out here recording. And his place is it's a little ranch house, a 1-bedroom ranch house that's been made into a studio. Nobody lives there anymore, but it's like, wow, they were here. It's like, yeah, and they sounded just like they always did. It's like, I couldn't believe it. It was like time stands still.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I'm glad to hear that people are still just doing it.
Yeah.
I saw an interview with Tony Visconti recently, or I think it was recently. I hope it is. Doing fine, man. Legendary people out there, just really legendary. So they know more about music they've forgotten more about music than I'll ever learn.
I know. Well, that's what's that's what's humbling, but it also keeps things interesting, and we can always go back and kind of continue research and listening and so on. I wanted to.
Well, that's true. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, we're about at the 1 hour mark, and before we wrap up,
okay,
I want to give you some time. Tell us about this latest recording. You have to tell us how people can hear your music, how people can book you for shows, how all of that stuff. So
yeah, sure.
Tell us about your recent recording, and tell us when we can expect to hear it.
Sure thing. Yeah, I just did a Kickstarter campaign last December and raised enough money to record a record um, in December, and it's coming out in October now on a little LA label called 40 Below Records, and that's good. It's been 7 years now, 7 or 8 now, 7 or 8. Let's call it 7 since I put a record out, and so I've been in a whatever on an odyssey. I've thought back to the like back when I listened to music, if an artist I liked didn't make a record for 7 years, I'd assume they retired. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, I'm back doing it, and I have a record due every 18 months now, which is fantastic. So I'm
Good.
back doing it, and so it was good to that's the story. Is I got back up on my pony and uh, and finished 10 songs and made an album, and I have a booking agent, Odyssey Booking. If anyone wants to book me, um, that's what I do. I make records and go out and play little gigs. I'm just the happiest. I think I started the interview. I'm just the luckiest guy in the world, second luckiest guy in the world,
So
second luckiest guy in showbiz.
how can so we can hear the new record in October, probably on all the streaming platforms, right? Apple,
Yeah,
Spotify,
yeah.
what?
They're gonna start. There Goes a Brooklyn Girl is the first single, and that's
Okay.
coming out May 6th. But I don't know how if that just means to press. That might just mean to the press. I'm not sure. It's weird to work with the label again. I'm glad that they're doing the things they're doing, because I wouldn't do it.
Right.
But it's you know what I mean, like the hype, the pushing. It's got to be done.
Of course,
Um, people people take you seriously then,
of
when
course.
you're actually because my last record I put 7 years out 7 years ago 7 years ago. I put it out myself, so it didn't have the real. So really, it's been 12 years since I've been in the public eye again,
So,
and so that's kind of my story. I'm like on a comeback swing here.
so how did people get in touch with you if they want to book you? Do they contact you or the booking agent?
They can go to my website and go to Chris Bailey's email,
Okay.
or go to Odyssey Booking.
Okay.
They'll know how to get. They'll know just that's how you usually do it
And,
when you
and
know
what
what
is
somebody's
your
agent
website?
is.
You want to spell it out for everybody?
It's freedyjohnston.com.
Okay.
Freedy, Johnston with a T. Yeah, so I've got a new record. Um, Man, I just what can I say? I'm I really don't want to sound saccharine or you know don't want to sound like I'm trying to say the right things, but these. First of all, I realize doing these interviews, you want to wrap things up and say things in a way that's like it could be years from now that people are looking at this and I'm long dead. You know what I mean? You just want to be like truthful.
Yeah.
And so like I've
There's
had a lot of mistakes that I've done a lot of dumb things in my music career, but I've been presented with so many opportunities that I just can't even believe it. That if I'd taken advantage of all of them, um, I can't even imagine what would have happened. So I'm just very grateful that I've got what I've got. I don't in any way feel like they done me wrong kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
There's none of that. It's more the other way around. It's like, oh, I could have, would have, should have, but I'm still doing it. And having known enough musicians, I'm not alone in the boat.
Right.
Everybody's like, because it's a weird job. It's like here I am, years into it and not, well into it. And like, did I ever do anything? Did I ever do any good? It's like, and then somebody will come up to me at a show or online and say, man, that song basically, got me through my divorce and saved my life.
Right.
And that's people have said things like that to me and they really mean it. And I have to take that really, truly deeply to heart and realize, hey, I actually do have a job.
Yeah.
You know, when I see people who look at me and I know they're thinking that, people like my brother
Yeah.
who are like, what do you do for a living again now? I'm not making fun of my brother. He's from Oklahoma. It's like, I'm if he's watching this, I'm cracking on you, Steve, but he's a hardworking man. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that in his mind he's thinking like, "So you live how?"
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and which makes sense. You know, if you see how some musicians, hey, I will say this just to be not facetious, but in a weird way, it's real. That song, "Life's Been Good to Me So Far," and "Taking Care of Business"
Yeah.
by BTO,
Oh yeah.
and "Welcome to the Machine" by Pink Floyd. Those
Yeah.
are all true. Those were all true. I realize they were instructional. It wasn't like a joke. It really was true. It's like if you're going to be a musician, get used to being like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and just like enjoying sitting around all day, just being you and getting
Yeah.
$1 million. That's what they want from you. Enjoy being Dave Grohl and just like sitting there and saying, "Yeah," instead of like feeling, that. So I never really took that to heart. And the other thing about the Pink Floyd song, it's like I was really, oh, whatever. You saw it all happen.
Yeah.
I just wasn't very savvy, and I just walked right into the machine, man.
Oh no, you know what?
Um,
We all did
we all
that
did,
back then.
and I'm not bitter. Yeah, and as I said in the earlier comment, I'm not bitter about it. I'm just commenting on it. Just
Yeah.
commenting. That's all, and just commenting in a way that, like, again, somebody else might get somebody watching this, some kid might have a hit song and
Yeah.
get a big opportunity.
Yeah.
And they might think, I remember I listened to Uncle Freedy, and Freedy said, "Grab that ring if it comes your way. Don't hold back." You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
that really is, that's really true. Like, I remember things when I was on the road with Sheryl Crow. I was, again, the luckiest guy in show business, and I was making comments about bad reputation on stage while I was singing it. And she said to me after a show one time, she said, "Freedy, my least favorite song is All I Want to Do, is have some fun." She said, "But it's also my favorite song."
Yeah.
As you said, it's my fans' favorite song, so it's my favorite song. So she was really good about that. She's like, give your song a break.
Right.
And anyway, that's neither here nor there. But hey, I would end it on a positive note, Brian. I'm very fortunate to be doing it, and I'm still writing songs. It's weird.
That's
It's not
great.
like I don't know. I don't have any. I'd stop, I think, if I forgot how to do it, or if
And
I
and
started just to really
and you're
blow.
still
I mean,
writing
I
great songs. I mean, you're not. It's
I hope
something that
so,
you
because
can really. Yeah, but it's something that you can really kind of hang your hat on because your songs sound just as fresh as they were, in 1991 or whenever we recorded "Can You Fly," and they sound just as energetic and fresh and alive as they did then. So it's a lot to be thankful
I'm
for.
glad to hear that, man. That
Uh,
record does. I will say that record it will live on,
yeah.
and I will say again, as I've said before earlier, there've been there's been drama, but I just want to say that Mark Zoltak really did make that thing happen through
Certainly did.
his bull like drive
Yeah,
to get all those people together.
he
And
certainly.
he has to be acknowledged. At the time, he and I, whatever. I wasn't as appreciative, let's say that, but I certainly want to make that clear that that "Can You Fly" would not be what it is without him doing it. And I think it also, in a way, "Can You Fly" wouldn't be the way it is if it hadn't had the restrictions put on it. It's a two-part record.
Yeah,
We did the first half, and Varnon was not really happy with it, or I didn't have songs done, or they didn't know what to do, and so we went back and did the second half with Newt. So it has this real complexity to it,
yeah.
and it wouldn't have had that if they'd liked it at first.
I just want
Because
to.
I know that Glenn want.
Hold on. I just
Yeah,
want to
go ahead.
clarify. Because yes, we are wrapping up, but you just mentioned two characters in our play, and one is Knut Bond,
Uh,
and he was
Newt, yes,
he produced half the record, and the other half of the record was
yeah,
produced by
Graham,
Graham.
maybe,
Graham Graham Maybe,
yeah,
who
yeah,
was our longtime colleague, but also played bass with you for many years, right? And
yeah.
and
Graham produced the first half, and then when we were going to go back in and do the second half, Graham, in his gentlemanly like way, said, I'd rather not produce.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, he's like, let's get Newt. He didn't want to deal with me. I don't blame him, man.
Yeah,
But
so
Newt came in, and then Graham played bass.
when Graham produced, Jared played bass, right? And then when Newt,
Yeah, it's like the other way around kind of thing. Yeah, it's
yeah,
weird.
and then
It was really, yeah. It was,
and then you mentioned Mark Zoltak and explain what Mark's role was and all of that, because
well, he was my manager. He was my manager, and he was the executive producer of the record.
right,
He got together all the musicians.
gotcha, okay,
He didn't do any sonic stuff or any of that. He just got the people together, and that was important.
right,
Um, there were a lot of good players on that record, and they wouldn't be on there. Like Sid or Kenny Margolis
yeah,
or and so he basically got the players together and but the songs were my songs, of course, and the and Kevin Salem was a big part of it. His influence, but it sounds still it's I guess oh it's again talking to musicians. It's like you can try, but you can't control the way you sound. You can really kind of control the way you sound, but you can't really. You know what I mean? So like I can't control the way Candy Fly sounds.
yeah,
It sounds really great and really odd and raw and desperate in a way, And I don't know why that is. I don't know why my last record sounds like it does. You just have to strive, to try to get back to a place. I don't know,
I think
but
it's
it was a moment in time,
yeah,
and I, you know,
I think it's
I'm glad to have changed.
yeah, no, of course. I think it was first of all, on my end, it was a great pleasure to be part of that record and to play drums on it. But it was also this kind of this like very young, kind of naive era of like recording at Water Music that stunk like an oil spill, and being in Hoboken before a lot of people lived there, when like Hoboken was kind of like an Italian neighborhood. And there was a very, very nostalgic moments there for me personally. So I don't know. So
Well, it still was 70s recording. There was not
yeah,
a computer in the place,
yeah,
and it was all 70s gear. So it was. I'm glad I learned that way. Actually, just to wrap it up, as far as that goes, um, I use a sound device. It's a brand, Sound Devices, hard disk recorder now,
hmm,
instead of Pro Tools because I don't want to see the screen.
okay, cool,
It has meters on it, but it really has taken me back to where it's like I don't have anything to look at,
right.
and
That's
I can't do any editing. I have to go back like I used to and listen to the take, and if it's not good, do it over.
good. Wow.
So I would recommend that if any if people are having trouble, I don't know, if you're encountering, if you're looking for a new way
Yeah,
to break out of your old way of recording,
yeah,
it's to go back to where you're just listening. And
yeah,
I'm sure you've worked in studios. Maybe even kids now do that, where like when they're recording and they don't need to edit, they'll put a towel over the screen. I've seen
yeah,
that done, which is it's
yeah,
very good to do that. It's like
yeah.
okay, what are we hearing here?
That's
It's
just
very because the way you see a sound form on those cattails on Pro Tools can sometimes affect the way it sounds.
I
If
agree.
it looks weird.
I totally agree. Well, Freedy,
Anyway, Brian,
I want to thank you so much for joining me on this journey tonight, and it was really truly great.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we're wishing you all the best in your new recording, and we're gonna be looking
Oh
for it
man,
coming out soon.
thank you very much, Brian. Great to talk to you, my friend. And I'll see you. I'll be in the city at some point in July or August. I'll send you a text and we'll get together.
We certainly will. I'm gonna say goodbye now, and then maybe we can stick around for a quick chat after we stop
Okay.
recording. Okay.
All right. Okay.
Take care.